Okay, I'll make my head a bit bigger. Whoop. There we go. So I'm going to do another late night game analysis video. So this is the same night, well, this is after class on Monday, the first day on the 13th. So what I'm going to do is do a kind of a run through of Control and talk about what's happening on screen, happening on level, talk about some of the things that happen in the game. This again is one of those analysis videos that we have spoke about doing quite a lot. Really, I find them really important to do because it helps us actually analyze and look at games, look at what's going on both a 3D level, talk about what's happening 3D wise, but then also just discuss about what's happening on screen and how that might relate to concept art or design or whatever. So I will take my face away. Boop, there you go. And let's go. So I'm going to click new game and I'm going to go straight in. So let's go through our checklist of what's happening. This came out in 2019, so we're looking like a 6-year-old game.
This is gonna be
That's Jess talking in the background, so I'll just turn her down a little bit.
weirder.
It's a 6-year-old game by Remedy. It's okay, so age 6 years. Platform, I'm playing it on PC, but I believe this is across multiple different platforms. But again, platforms are important because think about if it's a console/PC title, it's generally going to have a higher spec of graphics. If this is a Switch/PSP title, it's going to have a low quality of graphics because of obviously optimization. Players, it's a single player, therefore we're not going to have all the communication between servers we've got to have going down, up and down, all this kind of stuff. Everything's on my computer, and the internet's not going to have any impact on my computer. I don't have to communicate any of this information to other people around the world. Play style, it's got its fast-paced elements. It's got its it's got its points of like stress and its points of like fast pacedness, but really this game's fairly slow paced. If like compared to stuff like Overwatch, compared to stuff like CS:GO, graphics semi-realistic, but realistic. Like looking on screen, and we can see it right now. It's realistic. It's semi-realistic, but on the more realism side of things. On a character design side of things, Remedy isn't known for like super stylized characters. They're known for fairly realistic. They're known for interesting games. So a lot of what we're looking at here is going to be photo scanned heads converted into game ready assets. A lot of I like what Death Stranding does. Bit of a bad graphic. Then you can see it pop. So that's the play style. That's the graphics of the age, all that kind of stuff. The viewport. This is a third-person game, and I know we spoke about this in class a little bit today, but when you really start getting into how games work and look and all this kind of stuff, it is important to know that when you're making a game which is first-person, you've got a certain parameter of texture resolution you need to stick to. When you're making a third-person game, like what this is, you've got another kind of parameter we've got to think about. Okay, so perfect timing. There we go. So, welcome to Control. This is one of my favorite games of all time, both from a gameplay standpoint and also a visual standpoint. So, let's talk about this first initial area, the very beginning of the game, and let's talk about some of the stuff which is happening. Okay, so we're talking about making the outside of levels first, the basic walls, floors, grounds, ceilings. And we can see inside this kind of game that it's really simple. You can really see how simple it is. Obviously, the style of the game helps it. A lot of the environments in this game are based around the 1960s brutalist architecture movement, which was inspired by Soviet architecture during the 1950s, 1940s. A lot of concrete, a lot of straight lines, a lot of this kind of stuff. No fancy wooden filigree, nothing that you'd expect to see in kind of like a turn of the century Victorian kind of environment. This is all minimalism, but it also lends to, and this is where the design comes into it, it lends to the aesthetic of the environment. This whole shady Bureau of Control, that Federal Bureau of Control, that in itself a name is such a simple like Federal Bureau of Control. It doesn't sound great. But then you can see that that is then reflected inside the environment. Lots of straight lines, lots of bare concrete, very, very simple, utilitarian environments. Straight lines and stuff. So let's have a look at what's going on around us. So we've got some great kind of things to talk about. Some of it is going to be game design, the way we think about stuff, which can relate to then concept art or just general design, and some of it is kind of like more technical stuff. One thing I want to talk about is the general kind of design of the game, the concept art of the game, the narrative design. We don't really know when this game, well, we do, but aesthetically, visually, we don't really know where this game is set, because if we look outside, we've got a lot of modern cars. We've got things which look like they're from the 2000s, maybe 1990s, late to mid 2000s. You've got a lot of mixture of cars. This looks like a modern street right in front of us. But yet, everything inside this environment is 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. I love that. I love this like old-fashioned American office feel of this game. A lot of very tacky environments mixed in with a lot of obviously the supernatural elements of this game. If you've played this, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you've not played this, play it. It's a great game. Okay, so we talked about the environment in general, that it's all very like right angles, very brutalist, very Soviet inspired, brutalist inspired, but we've got some really cool stuff. So what I love to see is on the ground, the floor. Obviously, we're getting a reflection of this like office lighting up here, but on the floor, you can see that reflection isn't super crisp. It's quite worn. It's quite noisy, and that's because there's something called a normal map attached to the floor. And a normal map is just a different type of map. We'll learn all about maps, so don't worry about it. It's just a different type of map. But what that does, it has impacts on how light reacts to the floor. It makes it look like there's more information than there really is on the floor, like bump surface information. We've got a roughness, and roughness is dead simple. If it's black or very dark, it means it's not very rough, and if it's light or very light, it means it's rough. So the lighter the value, the rougher the surface. So I'm looking at this and thinking, that's quite rough, because the reflection is relatively clean, but then you've got this actual stamp on the ground, this big kind of emblem, which it's so cool when you actually analyze this and you understand what's going on. This big stamp is a image on its own. It's a texture on its own. It's actually placed ever so slightly above the surface of the ground, or it might be what we call a decal, which is placed within the texture. But it's not actually on the main material. So this like flooring material we've got in front of us, it's not actually part of that material. It's kind of like a separate thing. But it's how we can have this flooring with all the small speckly detail. This whole texture, if we come here, so you've got this metal beading, this metal rim here. So if we follow that up, we can see that just here, you can see that there, the floor is kind of separated there, almost like a tile. So what we could think is, okay, from here at the end of the stairs up to this point here, where the floor becomes a separate piece, that's the end of a piece of geometry. That's a separate texture. So I'm then going to travel to the right hand side. I'll be able to see that we have it again. There's a break in the floor that comes vertical. You can see that there. So from here round like that, that's one piece of geometry. That looks like a 4-meter square. So, as we will come to learn, when we're talking about 4 meters and 2-meter sections of textures, that equates to a 4096 or a 2048 texture. 4 meters equals 4096, 2 meters equals 2048. These numbers again will become very, very easy to understand, very easy to remember. So right there, that you can see there's a clear floor panel there, and then there's a clear floor panel here. So this symbol is a separate piece of geometry which is placed on top to give this little icon. And you see this texture everywhere. So this same floor tiling is down here. It's throughout there, it's over there, it's over here. The only difference is we're using other information, other bits of geometry to make it look like it's a different shape, or makes it look like there's more geometry there. So we've got these little brass runners here that run up. What that doing is, one, helping us see the visual separation between the flooring, because if this floor here was just like one big slab of this, whatever it is, it'd get boring, you know, it'd be a bit boring. But what this is doing is just giving us a bit of a visual interest. You know, it's giving us a little bit of a runner at the bottom here, just before the separation between stairs and floor. It's also separating like large sections of the floor and makes it a bit interesting. But then what it does, especially here, it's framing this kind of symbol on the floor. It makes you walk. It gives you a direction to walk towards the desk, or the reception desk. And then we don't necessarily see it here, but what we still can see, if we look there, we can see the break between the right hand floor and the left hand floor there, where that line goes up. We can see that carries on past it. So the floor doesn't change. It's literally still these floor tiles, these big old floor, these 4 meter by 4 meter floor tiles. We were talking today about modular seating. This is an example of modular seating. Now, modular seating, or modular anything, is like a Lego set. You've got components which you fit together to make a thing. What you're going to see is this planter, where the plants are, this kind of like planter with all the plants. This big rectangle is going to be used in different places, but the actual seats themselves, including the little concrete section underneath which holds the seat in place, that's not actually part of this planter. It's a section, it's a separate piece. It's a modular piece. So what I could do is I could have this planter be one piece on its own, and then I could have another version where I've literally just placed this little concrete seating section underneath it, and then I've got these 4 separate seats that, again, all separate, that I just duplicate along. So what I've got here is really 3 bits of geometry. One for the planter, the main concrete, you can ignore the actual plants themselves. One for the planter, one for this little section underneath, and then one for the seating. And then right here, you can clearly see a separation in between these 2 planters. So really all I've done there is I've just duplicated it, moved it to the right, and put different foliage in. So I've got one big bit of geometry here, but really I've got 3 bits of geometry making it up. One for the planter, one for a seat that I've duplicated, and one for the little concrete section underneath which is holding it in place. And then on top of that, I've got things what we call clutter to, you know, mess up the environment, to make it look a bit more interesting. So I've got some newspapers. I've got a little smoke ashtray, and you'll see this a lot. This little ashtray, you'll see a lot because it's just that. Can I knock it over? I can't knock it over just yet. And then it's the stuff on the inside, which again, just like the clutter, gives it a bit of asymmetry. So all the plants on the inside, you'll probably have, when they made this game, they probably had all the different foliage elements, and they made prefabricated, what we call them, prefab sections of plants. So instead of just having like, oh, maybe they had one planter that they made different variations of the plants on the inside, so they could just drag them in and kind of say, okay, this one's going to be this, one's going to be this. Again, all this stuff we're going to learn about. Stuff on the wall, you know, stuff on the floor. So we got a bin. Well, that's just a big old cylinder, isn't it? This, it's a cube with a cylinder. This, it's just a big cylinder. The geometry gets lost behind the texture, and then the texture gets lost behind everything else around it. If this water cooler was isolated in a sterile environment, we would be able to see every last nasty part of it. But because it's in a scene, surrounded by other objects, there's camera processing and camera effects happening, we don't see that weirdness. Cool. So the desk. So one thing I love about this game is all the office furniture, all the stuff which happens here. And again, I was talking about when we were introducing the briefs about we've got 10 assets, at least 10 assets to make, going from simple to complex. But even the complex one, we're going to keep it simple. It's complex within this kind of, you know, context. So let's have a look what's on this desk right now. So what have we got? A mug. We have a mug. We have a bin. Well, actually, Don't those two look very similar? That bin there and that bin there. I have a sneaky suspicion that that bin is just a very crudely changed version of that bin. Oh well, that's the main bin. That's the original bin, and then they've just done some cheeky scaling to make that bin. It literally looks like it's slightly scaled down and then slightly shrunk in the y-axis. Why not? People aren't going to notice that kind of stuff. A mug, like I said, a mug. What's that? A cylinder and then a little, C-shaped thing on the side of it. Ashtrays. Well, that's just a cylinder, and the texture on the inside is really, really simple. This newspaper looks complex, but we can look at this kind of stuff and we can see that it's actually really simple. This chair is probably one of the most complex objects that we're going to look at because it's got some interesting shapes on it. Obviously we've got the seat itself. It's got an arch back. We've got a flat surface. It makes it look soft. But then we've got the the aluminium bent steel. That's what I'm going to say. Structure. So obviously the arms are a bit bent. The back's a bit bent. You got the legs coming out in the four directions. A Filofax. The classic little pen on a string, pen on a chain kind of thing. The typewriter. These little green files are everywhere. A staple. So all this kind of stuff. It looks complex, but then when you actually get close to it, it's not complex at all. It's actually really, really simple. This briefcase, or this particular case, is technically called an attaché case. So all this stuff looks complex, but it's really not. But what it's all about is when a player actually comes in and they're not one of us, they're a civilian, they're going to run in, they're going to go, ooh, isn't it pretty? I'm going to move on. Because all they're going to be looking at is stuff to make the environment make sense. They don't need to have things be like forced in the face saying, this is the thing, that's what, they just need to look at it and go, I'm at a reception. I've got a flag, I've got a name, I've got stuff which looks like stuff, cool, I'm going to move on. Again, living in the world right now, in the last 30, 40, 50 years, we've all seen fire extinguishers on walls. Every country has them. It's kind of like a global safety thing. So again, this isn't so departed from reality that we wouldn't know what this is. Again, just filling up space. It brings you from the weird sci-fi SCP-inspired world to something where, yeah, it is this crazy supernatural environment, but you still gotta be safe. This is kind of an elaborate set piece, but it's a big elaborate set piece. So let's have a look through this little door here. Let's have a look. So what have we got going on? Okay, the same kind of stuff. We've got a chair. Construction-wise, this chair isn't too dissimilar to this chair. What we've got, I'm not saying that it's the same geometry change, but I'm just saying the way they've been made is very similar. You've got a backrest, you've got a bum rest, you've got bent aluminium frame, you've got some kind of casters for wheels. That's one thing I don't like about this. That should react. Oh no, it does. Oh, it's really stiff though. Ooh, come on. There you go. So we look at this seat here. Same kind of jazz. So you've got a backrest, but this time it's very straight, but very puffy. You've got a seat rest, a bum rest. It's very straight, but very puffy. The arms, there's a little bit more angle to them because obviously they're not that super smooth curved surface which is on the the reception chair out there. Same kind of jazz though. Same kind of jazz. What we got going on? Well, we've got another one of them phones. This phone is the exact same one which is on the reception desk. Reuse assets. This is what we do all the time. Reuse assets. The way you cleverly reuse assets is make sure that you're not making it look really obvious that it's reused, and that can be as simple as I can't see the phone that's in that room over there. At the same time, I can see this room. So out of sight, out of mind. Another way of doing that is if you've got a lot of phones in this case that are going to be visible at the same time, just make sure they're not all in perfect alignment and they're not all absolutely perfect. Do some shifting, do some moving, do some rotating. This is set design. This is making stuff look normal. So yeah, we've got the phone there, TVs. We've got another typewriter. We've got more a mug. We've got a little box. This little plastic. I guess you'd put your mobile phone. In fact, look at that. So we're in a super 1950s, 1960s sometimes early 70s kind of environment with all this really old-fashioned stuff, and then you've got modern day cell phones, modern day smartphones. I love this game for that. So you've got this little plastic like carry case. If you're going to do something like that, I mean, how simple is that going to make? It's literally just a cube that you extrude in, extrude down. More files, an ashtray, the exact same ashtray which is outside. Little boxes, how simple are they going to make? Little file of a Rolodex. So you can see that there's a lot of very, very simple stuff. When we look at another mug, when we look at these assets, when we look at these objects, you're going to see that it's actually, really simple. Breaking stuff down to a basic primitive. A mug is just a cylinder. This cigarette case, which is opened up, it's just a big cylinder. Now, what's funny as well is when you really look at it, that cigarette case and the cigarettes inside are massive. They're like cigar size. I love these pneumatic tubes as well. These little orange tubes that are in front of me. They're everywhere. They're dead simple, but you can just clutter an environment. And then stuff like that. It's just set piece of stuff. Really, really simple stuff. So let's carry on. Let's move on. One thing I love about this game as well is the lighting. So as we're coming through the security station, we're going up. We're almost getting guided forward. We're seeing this bright light. It pulls us forward, and we're seeing foliage. So this foliage right here, a lot of this, if not all of it, is being used in that foliage planter down there, where the seats are. Again, it's just replicated, reused, rotated, slightly scaled. This again is just where that plant, if we go look at it, that planter has a little bit of more information at the top. So you can see there that we've got a planter, but it kind of has this step at the top of it, where it goes up and then in, then up and then in. This one, the stairs here, just goes up in a right angle. It doesn't have any little step to it. However, it's pretty much the same geometry. This isn't modeled into the wall. This, from here to there, is one piece of geometry. From here to there is another piece of geometry. We're going to learn about how these walls are made and how it's not just one solid object. Yeah, so really, really nice. The lighting is beautiful. Cool. So then we're getting into this little area here. Again, we're going to be talking about a lot of the same stuff. The level design, the repetition of shapes, the juxtaposition between modern day 50s, 60s, 70s aesthetics. So we've got mechanical typewriters as well as digital typewriters. So that at the reception desk there, that's a mechanical typewriter. It's an old-fashioned typewriter. But the typewriter which is in the security office, it was covered up by a newspaper, but that's a mechanical, like a digital typewriter, I should say. So that's from like the 70s. Digital in what digital was back then. Oh, actually, a really good one here. I know I can go through this door because it's green. If this was red, it would mean no go. So red, green, yellow, blue, all colours in games mean something. So here we are in this little office space here. Obviously we've got some graphics on the screen. We've got some UI to tell us we can pick stuff up. So I know I can pick this up because it's got this little interaction dot above it. And the same thing over here. I know I can interact with this because it's got a little interaction dot above it. But what have we got in here? Again, we've got filing cabinets. We've got 1950s film film reels, or even 1940s. Celluloid film. These big film reels. You wouldn't have used those back then. Well, no, we wouldn't use these nowadays. This is all like very old-fashioned stuff. It's all down the aesthetic though. But really, this film canister, it's just a big cylinder. It's a big squash cylinder. Again, look at this. We've got a pneumatic tube cylinder. It's just a big cylinder. This little thing here, well, this is just a big like cuboid with a lot of these cylinders kind of pulled out of it. A lot more simpler than you would expect it. This, however, is more on the intermediate modeling side of things because there is actual physical depth into these tubes, and you want to make sure that the geometry of this object won't break the game or won't cause you issues. But again, that's whatever. Later on, we'll learn about that. Now, one thing I love about games in general, especially when you can tell the designers have given a shit, is stuff clutter, wall clutter. So right here on the inside of the wall, you've got like what looks like a light switch and then a thermometer. You've got like a fire alarm with cables going down and up. It just fills up the wall. Okay. So we're moving on now, and it's so early on in the game. It's at the very beginning, but it's so important that I point this kind of stuff out. And this comes into both the 3D, the 2D, the design, and the technical side of things. One, we're always being followed by these cameras. We're always being watched. That's a great aesthetic. Two, just because we're in this supernatural environment, again, doesn't mean our safety is in jeopardy. We've got fire extinguishers downstairs, and we've got a fire like sprayer here. Who would ever think to put that in? Three, we can tell that people have walked in this environment a lot because there's a well-worn, trodden path on that rug. So you got this really nice red carpet here, but yet there's a very obvious worn path that goes through. This is a well-worn, trodden path. Now, how that is actually produced and done, I make assumptions. Obviously, I didn't work on this game. I would have loved to. I didn't work on this game, so I have to make assumptions. However, just where I'm stood at the minute, there's some really good indications now. For some reason, I can see them more clearly on my recording than I can on the actual game screen. A very obvious one above my head. You'll see that there's a slightly lighter just above Jesse's head there. You see how the ground gets a bit lighter? That is telling me that there is a piece of geometry there and there's a piece of geometry there. I'm always trying to think about how they're doing these large sections of flooring. Is it one big section of flooring, or is it multiple, like jigsaw, big squares, 4-meter squares? This is probably the exact same physical geometry as what made the flooring down there, this grey flooring. They've just changed the texture. But I'm looking for things, and again, this is the stuff we trade in magic for science. You start seeing things. This light line here gives me the impression that that's one piece of geometry there, and that's another piece of geometry there. That's a texture break, essentially. Now, the other one is a bit harder to see, and I can clearly see it in my recording, but I can't see it in the gameplay too much. I think it's because of the size. So I'm going to use my recording to kind of try and show this. Can you see just above Jesse's head, right in the middle of her head there, if I actually zoom in, right, just to the right of Jesse's head, can you see a slightly dark line on the ground there? I can't even draw on screen to show you as well, which is a pain in the ass. So you've got this dark patch on the ground, but do you see how there's a little bit of a line when Jesse's head's out the way? There you go. See how there's like a bit of a sharper line? There we go. Right there. Look right there. You see you've got this dark patch here, but you got a slightly darker line there. That's kind of giving me the impression that that's also a bit of geometry. And I'm seeing something similar. So it's harder to show because it's darkened out because I'm in pause menu. Although, can I go photo mode? Oh, yay, photo mode. Right. Any game with photo mode I'm happy about because it means I can explore a little bit. As I saw in the Witcher videos. Right, okay. Right in the middle of the screen. Again, I can see it on the recording, but not so much on the actual game screen. Right in the middle of the video, then I'm going to zoom in. I can see a very sharp line in the geometry. Hopefully we'll be able to see it. This is again where your eye begins to get trained over time to see stuff. I can see a break in the geometry run across the middle of the screen there. And that's giving me the impression that there's two bits of geometry. In fact, if I look down, that line, that break, is pretty much in the middle of this. So from here to here, that line comes down the middle, like there. Okay, that's cool. I like that. This kind of stuff becomes, again, more obvious as time goes on. But I can clearly see, getting back to it, when I'm playing as a player, I can clearly see that there's a well-trodden path going through the game, going through the environment. I'm telling a story. Oh, well, that's looking so familiar. Isn't this the planter that's downstairs? All that's different is we've just got this little bit of a break in there. Well, that's very simple to do, but this planter looks very similar to that planter down there. Okay, same with this one. Look at that. Ooh, planter. The only thing that makes it a little bit different is because the foliage is different. There's a desk right there. So this little table, that's a desk. But really what's... sorry, I've caught my throat. But what's so desk-like about it? Well, what is a desk? It's a surface, a flat surface being held up by some form of frame. Well, we've got... Oh, don't do this. No. Okay, so I'm going to have to pause the video a sec. And we are back. So that's a fault I've had happen a couple of times in the past. Only ever in this area, when I'm trying to do these kind of videos, I have no idea what it is. But we've got this little table here, like I said. So we've got a basic kind of top. I mean, that top, look at it. It's just a squashed cube. That's all it is. And then we've got a very basic frame. That frame, it takes 5 minutes to make. But what we're doing is we're also leaning on the aesthetics of this time period. Again, 1960s, 1970s, very kind of like straight, efficient office use. You see a lot in like, you know, federal buildings. You see it a lot in like... there was an art movement during the 40s called Bauhaus and 50s called Bauhaus. I think it's 30s because it was a German movement that was basically squashed and destroyed by the Nazis, and then it resurged after the war. But it's all very like it's actually great because Bauhaus helped us understand how to bend aluminium to make chairs and shit. It was cool. It was very, very cool. But you know, these tables right there, you've got this flat squashed like top. I think it's a very basic frame. That's a table right there. Boom. It's not super textured to be super hyper realistic. Well, not super hyper detailed with all the crazy textures. It's just very simple. There will be a texture there. It's just subtle because that's what it needs to be. Now these chairs, we've already seen these particular seats because these are what are on these. So I was saying before about modularity. You've got these seats down here. You only make one of them and you duplicate them. So these seats that are on this planter are these. They are the exact same seats. The only difference here is you've got, again, a little bit of a metal frame around it. But if you understand how to make this chair, look at it like simple. You got this right angle kind of soft armrest. And then if we go to the security office, we've got this. So actually, this is kind of funny. I've only just realised the more I do stuff, the chair outside. I don't know if this is intentional. This chair here feels kind of 90s or 80s. Feels kind of 80s. This chair feels very 70s. Bit more right angle to it, but there's the armrest. And the chair we were just looking at then feels very 60s. I don't know if that's intentional. If it is, that's incredible. These are the things, again, I don't know if I'm just because I'm getting excited about the game. But yeah, like these armrests and this frame, well, it's just the exact same thing. It's just a lot of very simple geometry, which we're absolutely going to learn how to do, with very simple textures, which we're absolutely going to learn how to do. And then what makes it a little bit more interesting, well, it's what you put around it. You know, we've got the chair, we've got the two tables next to him, but you've got an attaché case. This is just duplicated from down there. Look at that. There's one there and there's one there. We've got a ashtray. Well, we've seen two of these already. We've got a mug. The mug's making a reappearance. We've got a magazine. These are really simple to make. And again, it just breathes a bit more light into the scene. It makes it a bit more interesting, but it's dead simple. And okay, so I'm going to talk about some technical design and some like cool level design stuff now. If you've played this game at all, I don't think any of you actually in class have actually played this. But if you have, you understand the relevance between this image, and this image there. Very, very cool. Very cool. But it's all structured very awesomely. That's game design stuff. Technical design, or technical building. So we've got walls, and this is modularity stuff here. You've got all these walls here, but what might be happening, again, I'm making assumptions, is you've either got one big wooden wall from like here over to this corner here. That's all one big wooden wall. And then you have these kind of brass dividers to help physically or visually break up one big solid wall. Because you can't have one bit of wood be that long. I mean, to be honest, a piece of wood that width is already like crazy. But what you could have is basically one long piece of repeated wood. And I'm going to look for repeating patterns in the wood. Yep, I can already see repeating patterns. Okay, so you've got this little, right in the middle of the screen right there. You've got this circle pattern right in the middle. And then it's right there. In the middle of the screen right there. You got the circle pattern. This is what we call a knot. Knot in wood. Yeah, cool. There you go, boom. But yeah, you could have like one big long piece of geometry. This thing, these brass sections are helping break it up. Or what you'll have is from this corner here to this brass divider, that's one piece of geometry. That's our 4 meter long or 2 meter long section of wall we'll be getting very familiar with. And then you got another one, and then you got another one. And this brass divider is basically just helping us visually separate those sections off. And you get the same thing here. You've got sections of wall with these brass dividers to help break up the monotony. Same thing's happening for the roof. This type of lighting is very common, especially in like older buildings. It's very common. It's very bright, but I love it. I think you go from the dark into the light. It's all symbolic. But instead of just having like the entire roof be a big luminous, emissive texture, you're breaking it up again. You know, in each one of these is like a meter chunk of lighting. You know, it's cool. Okay, so that leads us down here. And we've got a green light over there. Ooh, it beckons us forward. And then we've got this, the darkness. Ooh, that beckons us forward. Let's have a look over here. What have we got? Cool stuff on the wall. Again, check out that fire extinguisher. There's one over there. And then we've got this little cool first aid defibrillator thing. That's cool. Toilet. Very exciting. Again, lots of examples of really cool things we're doing inside levels to, populate stuff, to make stuff look a bit more busier. What I love is this little vent here, because it's so simple. In fact, you can clearly see the subdivisions. You can clearly see and count the amount of edges going around this. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So this is I think this is a 16-sided cylinder that's been converted, like modeled, to be one of these, I don't know, is that an air vent to suck the air out or to pump fresh air in? This little guy's on the wall. It's not attached to the wall. This is literally placed on the front of the wall here to give it, to give the impression of. Same thing like this guy here. This isn't modeled into the wall, obviously. This will be one separate object that's just placed. This walling's really nice as well, because it's just a really basic kind of like painted concrete slab, what they call not an asphalt, it's called cinder block. It's kind of like a bit of a concrete cinder block kind of texture on the wall. There's just given this texture, given a roughness to make it look like it's been painted, like with an emulsion or something. Dead nice. And then on the floor we've got a really nice tiling texture, and I would love to actually see a big old texture of this to find the repetition within the texture, but you can't quite see it here, which is good. Ooh, a little bit of steps right there, a little stepping stair. Okay, so let's move on. So, just to give you a bit of a game design behind the scenes, if you've not played this game, I do recommend playing it. It's a great game. You are a character, Jessie, who is looking for her brother, who was taken in by the Federal Bureau of Control, who is essentially, if you're familiar with the SCP universe, it's very similar to SCP. It's a government body which helps control, monitor, and investigate, anomalies and stuff. But the whole building, not to be a spoiler warning, if you don't want to know, just move on. The whole building itself is an anomaly. And people might argue with me, why am I talking about this kind of stuff when we're game artists? Why should we not know about this kind of stuff? Why should we not think about this kind of stuff? how are we meant to work on a game which is meant to elicit people's kind of like uneasy emotions if we don't know what makes people uneasy? And I'm going to show you why that's important now. Well, in a second. So we're moving on a little bit. So we've got a really clean outside here, the little entrance, our little reception, and we're moving into a bit of office space. So we're getting some really nice, partially open shutters into offices. Not quite fully visible, but it's partially visible. We've got a little clutter on the ground. Mugs! Even more mugs on the ground. This game loves mugs. So we've got like clutter. It's filling up the space. What's going on? We've got a janitor cart. A portent of things to come. Again, another bin, which is great. Notice boards, always good. You can make a bunch of these and just fill them up with rubbish and tell a story with them. We got alright, I love this. This is like a proper 1970s, late 1960s photocopy machine. They were huge and ugly. But yeah, photocopy machine. More offices. Pitch black, can't quite see inside. The reflections getting in the way. It's getting a bit uneasy. We've got so we've got the janitor's cart, but then we've got this janitor sign here, slippy when wet. Ooh, interesting. More office space. We've got a little bit of light drawing us towards this little snack machine. But when we look closely, aren't these all kind of peculiar? They're all these white with black text, kind of dystopian food packs. Very, very weird. Drawing closer to this, what I really want to point out is, hopefully it comes through on the recording, but if we look at that top row and we look at the middle pack where it's Cracker, you'll be able to see, hopefully you'll be able to see that there's almost like a sharp line around the actual text on Cracker, and the same on Trail Mix, and on the same on Pistachio. That's because what's happened is they've made a piece of geometry, or they've stamped on the text. So each one of these doesn't actually hold the text of like pistachios, potato chips, crackers on it. It's kind of like stamped on top of it. It's a very, very cool thing that's happening. But anyway, black and white dystopian candy. Ooh. And then you've got this again 1970s looking coffee cart thing going here. Oh, look at these seats. So we've seen these already. It's very dark, but we've seen these seats. We've seen this little side table. It's just got a little like document on top of it. All very familiar. Hey, we've seen one of you before. And in fact, we've seen these before as well. These are in the foyer. If we run back very quickly before anything else happens, no spoilers. We're going to look above the... Oh, look at that. So above the doors there, we see those thin grates. What I'm looking at there is what is happening over there. So over here. Again, all this is a piece of geometry which is placed on the wall to just fill it up. But how simple is that? Literally, that is so simple to make. So simple to make. And then we're in this office. So again, we're looking at this really cool office stuff. We've got this late 1960s to 1970s big tape reel thing, and then we've got more of like a mid-digital, not quite analog, but mid-digital typewriter with this clipboard on top. One of them phones, we've got a file of fax, we've got these little tape reels, which obviously, because this is there, we've got these tape reels next to it. Again, we're telling a story. Fan, filing cabinets, books. It's got this horrendously tacky wooden veneered office furniture feel. We've got one of those 70s office chairs. We've seen all this before already. Well, besides this desk anyway. We've seen all this stuff already. We're just reusing it. But it's how you lay stuff out. So you've got this tacky desk that's then just been duplicated over here. It's pretty much the same, right? Because you've got if you look underneath it there, you've got the drawers. But if we look here, the drawers are there. So what you've got is this little piece here. Mugs, 2 mugs, 3 mugs. Mugs everywhere. Ashtray. You've got this section of the cabinet here with the doors. 1 tall door and 3 doors there. But underneath there, you've got the exact same thing. So it just means that you've got this top section of cabinet is one piece, and then this is another piece. Awesome. And you just flip it. It's so simple. What's on here? Okay, we've got one of those semi-digital typewriters. We've got a confidential file. Another one of those phones, more mugs, a stamp. You can see that it says cancelled right in the middle of the screen. It says cancelled. Tape player, the reel-to-reel tape player, ashtray, more in and out box, mugs. You know, TVs, cigarette packets. A cigarette packet is just a big cylinder. Big cuboid. You know, and again, you see the pattern happen. You see the same thing happening over and over and over again. Foliage, actually, this foliage is on its own enough that when you really look at it, it's kind of shit. You know, when I get close to it, you can see the blurriness of the pixels in that. It's kind of shit, but I love it. I absolutely love it. More chairs. Again, so we've got another 4-seater chair there in front of us, but the black leather is right there as well. Again, exactly the same bit of geometry. All they've done is made one version. In fact, actually, you know, where you got the sidearms there with the black leather kind of like wrap around it, well, that's just what's happening there. Look there. It's exactly the same. Exactly the same. It's just really cheeky. And then a little whiteboard with some stuff on it. Telling a story. This game is great about telling stories with environmental props. You know, these boards right here are great for putting up like, oh, you've got some writing on top of it, which is giving you clues to the game. This is showing you that this is people trying to work out the formula to figure out whatever's happening in the laboratory, all that kind of jazz. Tell a story. Okay, so this is where smoke detector, sprinkler. This is where the game starts to go a bit weird. And though I'm not a massive horror fan, I love things that are kind of like psychologically chilling. I love that kind of stuff. We've been able to move back and forth from this area. And like I said before, oh, look at that. Planters, seats, tables. We've seen all this before. We've been able to move back and forth from this area. But I have told you that this is all a very shady, supernatural government kind of body. If you've never played this game before, when I first played this game, like 6 years ago, because I played it when it came out, it was a chilling time for the game. It was like, well, it was a chilling time for the player. It kind of made me very unnerved in a good way. I was like, ooh, this is spooky. So we travel through, and this is, you might think this is super cliche, but I thought it was so clever to do. We're traveling through, but then this looks a bit weird. So we've gone past there, but now there's a wall here. Interesting. Okay, so we can't go back anymore. The building is pushing us forward. As a designer, as a concept artist, as just a person who's interested in games, this is something we need to know about. This is like psychological stuff, you know, pushing the person forward. The building is pushing you forward. Again, more offices with lots of stuff inside. Exactly the same jazz. Exactly the same jazz. Lots of nods towards, you know, we're forcing the player to look at certain things. So as a concept artist, as a designer, as a 3D artist, you might be asked to think about certain things, level designs, all that kind of stuff. What we're doing here is we're forcing the player as they walk down this corridor to look at this portrait. This is quite an important person in the game, even though they're dead right from the beginning. This is quite an important person in the game. And then we've got this guy. So we're going to skip through this guy's stuff because we don't really need to know about it. Yes, thank you, Ati. I'm not going to give away who he is. If you've played the game, you might know who he is. But he's this really cool Finnish guy who's just very cool. But again, you know, we've got this guy. What I love about this as well is we've looked at the flooring and it's always been this very like here, for instance, you can see the ground is this semi-rough, semi-shiny kind of noisy, shiny lacquer surface. But around this area where Ati's been kind of mopping, you've got the mop marks. That's so clever. So clever. Doing that is super simple. That seems like crazy stuff. That's actually really simple to do. Super simple to do. And I bet what I'm not seeing here is a point where the textures literally kind of like cut between each other, or maybe the this is an overlay. I don't know. It's very clever. I love the fact that you can see his mop marks. That's very, very clever. Thank you, Atty. We'll move forward. Move out my way, Atty. Okay. So that's the beginning of... Oh. My. Have we been here before? This game throws you around in these kind of really cool... Like, it just switches you around. And we're in the first 5 minutes of the game. So this is obviously telling us that we need to go here. Now, what was here before? We had a portraiture, a painting of the back of Atty, back of the janitor. But now it's an elevator. Amazing game design, amazing narrative design. You know, again, I cannot stress enough that just because you want to be a concept artist doesn't mean you don't have to know about narrative design. You don't have to know about composition, about cinematography, about leading a person around a scene. In fact, you have to know all about that shit. It's really important. What I also love is, if we were to go downstairs again now, there's now a room back here. So where a room wasn't here before, there is now a room. It's just because there's a collectible inside it. It's just an office that kind of appears with a collectible. But again, that's our outside. And our outside is suitably modern, but our inside is suitably retro. Okay, so moving on. So that's just the beginning 5 minutes of this game. So already super, super cool. What we're going to do is go through to about where the game really kind of picks up, and then we're going to stop it there. So that's our entrance. That's our elevator. This elevator is probably always here, but it's hidden behind the geometry for these walls. Because if you look at this, you could fit two of these these wooden wall sections. You could fit them there. So this is probably here the entire time, but as we, when we walk around and some of the walls disappeared and other walls appeared, it probably switched out other geometry for this geometry. Okay, so let's go downstairs. And let's take a wee sip of our beverage. If you've not played Control, I really recommend playing it. It's a great game. It's fun to play, but also it's just a great narrative game. It's amazing on its visuals. You're not going to have a particularly whimsical fantasy environments. You're never going to have any of that. But what you're going to have is just beautifully thought out, very cool left of center kind of environments. This is just FMV stuff, so we're going to skip past it. There you go. Control, great game. So again, that's the first 3 to 5 minutes of the game. Okay, so we open up and now we're actually in the game. Did we lose her there for a moment? Okay, so we're in a similar environment. Let's have a look what's similar. Let's have a look what's different. And let's have a look visually what's happening so the design people can get kind of some love. What's similar? Well, look at this. So what we've got here is a little bit of a concrete slab, but we've seen these seats before because these are the seats that were connected to the planters downstairs. The difference being that there is no planter here. It's just kind of like a concrete slab and they're attached to that. Same thing over there. We have seen this guy before. Mugs. We've seen this guy before. And again, some of this physics kind of freaks out a little bit. We've seen this water cooler before. Again, more seats, more mugs. We've seen something similar to this table here. It's just, it was one of the higher tables that was next to the seats upstairs, but the same kind of jazz. Or upstairs, downstairs, I guess. We're going up, not down. This ashtray, we have seen 3 of these so far. But that's an ashtray. And in fact, what's cool is the Ash Collective on the inside is an overlay, which is used in all the ashtrays. And all you've got to do is look at the shapes that are happening, the arrangement of the ashtray, or the arrangement of the cigarette butts. And if you look into small and big ashtrays, you'll see the exact same arrangement. We've got a bit of foliage. This is a good example of when we're talking today about focus foliage. This is a pretty good example of focus foliage because it's kind of one thing on its own. It draws your eye to it. However, just behind me is an even better example. This geezer. This is a great example of focused foliage. So you can't really. This is a unique piece of geometry. It's one on its own. It's very weird. I don't know if this is a real plant or if this is from one of the weird planes in this game. I don't know. But that's a good example of foliage. So this planter, again, we've seen this before. It's the exact same kind of arrangement as other things downstairs and upstairs. It's just instead of being long and rectangular, this is a big square shape. But it is just... Oh, it's not going around here. It's the same planters that were on the very bottom floor. Ashtray. Seating. Table. We've seen one of them before. Mug. Repetition. You see where the repetition comes from? Seats again. Ashtray. Table. Mug. Documentations. All this kind of stuff. Fire extinguisher. We've seen these little fire alarm pull buttons everywhere. Filling it up. Okay, so what's different? Okay, so we've got this wall here. Now this wall is very fun because you've got, if you're paying attention at the beginning, you would have seen these speakers above the door at the beginning. When I turned around and looked, you would have seen these. But you got this big old concrete wall, and then you've got this really nice brutalist Soviet kind of concrete architecture, I guess you'd call it. I like this particularly because where I come from, Lee, there's our library in the center has this exact kind of thing happening, and it's so 60s it hurts. But this is really basic. It is actual geometry. You can see at the bottom there, it is actual physical geometry. It's just the textures are really basic, you know, dead simple. So you got that. You've got these lacquered walls. Oh, we've seen those before. We've seen these vents before. We saw them upstairs. But then you got this lacquered wall here. Now I've spent enough time in this game, and I've done this kind of video enough that I've found repeating patterns in this texture here. So let me go to photo mode. There we go. Let me move right. Okay, so right in the middle of the screen there, you've got this darker element here. Darker element here, darker element here, darker element here, darker. So you can see you got dark, 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 dark. So there to there to there, and then it repeats there to there to there. Again, civilians will not notice this, and a lot of professionals won't notice it if they're not looking for it. What's good about this is I really can't see where the texture ends and begins. I only know that this is a tiling texture because of things like that. The fact that I can see, I've lost it now. Where's it gone? There we go. That we've got, like, you know, elements. Like here we've got two dark spots. Here we get two dark spots. The point where you can really tell that textures are repeated is when you see like actual colourful pixel separations, and when we see that stuff, we'll point it out. So we'll see that everywhere. On both of these black lacquered wall, it's essentially one big piece of geometry that's, well, it's either, sorry, one big piece of geometry that you've tiling the texture over, or what you've got is, again, that 4 meter square of texture. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There might be 10 pieces of geometry here for this black lacquered wall. That's just one of these big 4 meter square bits of geometry, just to cover space with a well produced tiling texture, seamless texture. So that's happening both sides. Again, you've got this lovely concrete 60s kind of motif going on here, which is lovely. The difference being this one's got a little window cut out, and I'm wondering, do we have... No, it's not. Okay. So getting back into it. Let's talk about some actual visual narrative. Again, just because we'll, you know, some of you want to be 3D artists, that's awesome. That's my realm. However, just because you want to be a 3D artist doesn't mean that you have to forget about design and narrative. Everyone needs to know about these things. Look at how that's drawing us down the corridor. What we've got here is almost like letterboxing, or like it's all the squares are getting smaller towards our destination. We've walked through, so if we're in the elevator, we've walked through. Look how you've got that one door frame right in front of us. And then it goes to a smaller door frame when that ends. And then you've got the actual door frame of the door at the end of the corridor. You got this red line which draws down towards that corridor. Down, drags us forward. I think it's absolutely amazing. So simple, so subtle. It drags us forward. What I really like as well is these lights. These are really fun. you make one of them and you just duplicate the shit out of them. So one of these lights, this is just like a really old-fashioned 60s light where it's just a quite a strong halogen bulb. Oh, no, it wouldn't be a halogen, it'd be something else. It'd be some sort of like god-awful old-fashioned bulb. Big bulb, and then you've got a reflective dome above it. And then all they've done is they've put that in there and then just made like a black mass above it. Let's see if I can get close enough. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, so there is actually, I don't know if you can see that on the recording. There is actually a roof above it, and these lights are all kind of connected into it. So there is actually, though we don't see them, that the reason that this is there and we don't really kind of see them is because these are prefabs again. These are pre-made objects that they just place in place, but they've all would have had maybe like a power cable connected to them in case you want to have like one on its own falling down from a ceiling. And all they've done is just arrange them so they're all like evenly distributed like that. And because how light works, we've got the bright light in front of us, so then we don't see the dark behind it. Okay. Oh, another CCTV following us. How very interesting. So yeah, there you go. Beautiful lights, but then you got these doors drawing you down. You've got a door frame here that draws you down, and then this wooden corridor turns into another door, which opens up into a similar kind of area. But then you've got this other door frame in front of you that, as you can see there, it kind of like goes down in steps. It staggers into the door, dragging you down. Again, we're looking at other stuff. A little desk. What's on the desk? We've got... Oops, Daisy, someone's just done something. We've got a pen on a string. We've got a Rolodex, a really cool old-fashioned lamp, one of those digital typewriters, a phone, a state. We've seen all this stuff already. A mug. All this stuff we've seen. Even down to like this little nameplate here, Barbara Martin. You can make that in 10 minutes. From modeling to UV into texturing, dead simple. Honestly, 10 minutes is all you need. And that's all you need for something as simple as that. And that's just so simple, but it adds that extra level of something to the scene. We've got a lot of stuff we've seen already. So we've got the hydromatic tubes. We've got this little like station we saw in the first floor. Again, oh look at this. This is the exact thing that we saw downstairs. So we got a planter, in this case a rectangle with the little step in. We've got the modular seating, where it's actually just the bottom kind of concrete that it sits on is literally placed on top of it. It's not actually part of this main planter. It's so amazing. Let's do some clutter. Mugs. Attaché case that's been dropped and opened with a few things dropping out. Ooh, red. We can't go through there to Executive Central, you know. And there are these little rooms either side we can go in. But again, the same thing. You've just got a lot of the exact same stuff, just arrangement. So, really, we've not looked at many assets. We've not looked at many items. But what we've seen is now this really big, impressive, and oppressive environment. Repetition now, we're seeing those wooden panel walls again, but also with that concrete thing here and the flat concrete there and the big sign. Now we saw a kind of a stamp impression of this downstairs, but now we see like the actual big thing. Okay, so we go through, and I'm gonna have to kind of jump past a lot of this, but we'll talk about stuff as I go through. Cinematography, incredibly important. Look at that big letterbox of light drawing our eyes forward. We're drawing us forward. Something that's helping us is you've got this shimmer on the screen, which is drawing us towards a position. So I go through this. Yep. And then we're into the ethereal plane. So Control's got this really great aesthetic where you've got, like I said, the 1950s to 1970s, 1960s aesthetic office, corporate, federal building, but then you've got this place which is very like aesthetic, a very like ethereal. It's all hard surface, and you got this ever-present pyramid in the middle, drawing. That's why you've always got to walk towards the pyramid. It's drawing you forward. It's quite simple, quite obvious, Let me just smash a geese. Smash a geese. Boom. Pick up a geese. Yep, pick up a gun. Ba 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 ba. There we go. Jump on a geese. Shoot a geese. Boom, 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 boom. The shooting in this game gives you... Oh, I shouldn't have done that. The shooting in this game gives you absolutely no support. When you play this, there's no aim assist or anything in this game. It's the shooting's actually quite hard, but I like it. There you go. Right, let me on. There we go. So yeah, brilliant game. So again, just got to get past this bit to get to the end of the video, essentially. Now these geezers are quite fun because when they're walking towards you, you kind of see how they sink into themselves. But then when they get closer to you, they kind of stand up and go and become the normal people, and then they shrink down again when they get further away from you. Oh, when you shoot them, they kind of stand up straight a little bit. I don't know if that's like something that happened during testing, like oops a daisy, something's happened, and they go like, oh, actually, you know what, that looks kind of creepy. Whatever it is, I like it. These geezers, just kind of like, they're all hunched and it's all weird. There you go. Right. Kind of, oh, will you leave me alone? Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Are we done now? Yes. Okay, and then we're out. Really great audio as well. So this, like where it's saying the board approaches you, board approaches you. It's all kind of like muffled. It's really cool. If anyone's familiar with the SCP universe, this is like very close to that kind of vibe. Not as crazy as SCP, but it's kind of got the same similar vibe. Now what they do very cool in this as well is they do live action recordings projected onto the scene, and you'll see one in a little bit where they'll have something recorded on camera and like a live action actor, and then they'll project it into the scene. That's really cool. Okay, so here we've got the boss's office. This geezer, this is his office, and we've got some stuff going on. So obviously we've got another red carpet. This time it's just got this maze kind of pattern on it, which all means something. We've got these seats again. Once again, we've got modular seats. It's the same black that we've been seeing everywhere with the very simple frame around it. The table is unique, but you probably see this table in other places once or twice, but it's like a big table. It's a big office table, big boss table. The phone is exactly the same. You got all these documents exactly the same. These folders are exactly the same. These pneumatic tube canisters are exactly the same. The cigarettes are exactly the same. Yes, there's blood everywhere, obviously because of the geezer. You know, you've got this little trash can there. We've seen one of those before. The difference is, actually no, that's exactly the same. It's just only looking red because there's red around it. But that's just standard trash can that's everywhere else. Folders. All these will be the exact same folder, just duplicated around and slightly moved, slightly modified. So all here, this is the great thing about 3D modeling, and this whole jazz, is it looks really detailed, it looks really busy, but again, there's so few actual unique elements happening for unique models that it's, if we were to delete everything except one of each asset, this entire scene will just get really blank and bare because we'll lose 99% of everything. But it's just good level design, makes it look like there's a lot more in it than there actually is. And there are other things that makes, you know, we've got the history and the storytelling, you know, we've got some drinking stuff with some cigarettes, we've got shirts on hangers, we've got movie reels, movie player on audio player, we've got a globe, we've got this really cool bit of, this actually means something technically in the game as well, but you got this little, like, art piece, this gold embossed art piece here. That guy there that I just destroyed, that, like, clock means something. You've got, you know, stuff. A lot of this stuff again. Once again, once again, a lot of this stuff is really basic to make. This with like the dead reed plants in it. This vase here. So simple. I mean, it's just a big cylinder. That's all it is. That's all it is. Even within this super crazy boss's office, still got to have a smoke detector. You've still got to have a light switch. You've still got to have a thermometer. You've still got to have fire alarm there. Seek shelter. We can come free now. Okay, so far we've explored the environment. It's given us a few little spooky elements. You know, we've had this whole thing. Obviously, your man there has killed himself. We've gone through this ethereal plane to get this kind of like sentient gun. That's all good. Again, the great thing about this game is the cinematography. So when you think about making concept art, when you think about making stills, even as a 3D artist, if you're doing stuff inside the Unreal Engine, you can't just give everything a white light. You've still got to give it information. You've still got to give it history. So when I want to make something look scary, what's the most scariest color ever? Red. Again, what did we do when we first came in? We had that big long line of red carpet that all the squares got smaller and smaller, dragging us towards the door we've just come through. And then when we were coming back out, what we left with, what we greeted with, complete black and then red with these 3 hanging bodies. And I don't think you heard it on the audio then because I've turned the audio right down, but you also had like this, not a, we got like an audio sting, I call it, like a wang, kind of, ooh, spooky. But that, you know, the lights behind us casting a long shadow. And then there's light in front of us casting a light shadow, a long shadow towards us. It's red. Red means danger. We've got these 3 unnatural bodies floating in space. We have to push forward. So when we push forward, they drop. Oh, we go for, oh, spooky, spooky. My head. I got a headache. I got a migraine. Again, what's happening here is we've got some live action recordings of the voice actress and the face actress, the person whose head was actually scanned for this, doing some of this, and they superimpose it. It's very cool. This is obviously all in-game stuff. Like, yeah. And then bodies drop back, and we shoot some geezers. So now we're like in the game. So there's not long of this video left now. So I've got rid of them guys. Again, so that's where we started off. Well, ooh, hang on a minute. This is where we started off before. But now, oh, the carpet's leading us to the... Oh, spooky. So again, what's happening is the same stuff we've been looking at. How much unique elements are we looking at? Maybe we've looked at about 30 unique elements. But in a big game sense, that's not a lot. You know, them chairs there. We've seen these before. Mugs. This table we've seen before. I think this is unique. Mugs. But, okay, so this is one of them things. So this projection which is happening on screen right now, this is actually a physical recording, like a digital recording, camera recording, and they superimpose it, and it's really well projected. It's very interesting. It's very clever. Great game. And then we're in an office. Again, these black lines, hanging bodies everywhere. These red. So again, we're going to see how bad I am at this shooting, the shooting of this game. There we go. I'm not getting any of my powers at the minute, and I generally rely on the powers in this game. Be gone. There you go. There's one over there. That it? Oh, there's one more. Oh, there's one more over here. So it keeps coming in. This isn't a this is a combat heavy game, but it's not a like strategic combat. There is a strategy to combat, but not like Rainbow Six or CS:GO or anything like that. It's a different kind of combat because you got superpowers eventually. Okay, so the game's starting to open up a little bit. We've started to introduce ourselves to the weirdness. We're starting to tell a story. So we've walked from the boss's area here. What we missed here is this like weird red room over there. Ooh, spooky. What is going on over there? You we're into like the central office area, and we're greeted. You might see that geezer floating, and then you look around, and oh, floating people, obelisks. Again, more of this right-angled environment stuff. I don't want to collect that. I don't need to collect it. Oh, look at that. New speakers. We've seen these speakers before. If you paid attention in the beginning as well, you would have seen this roofing in the beginning. It's kind of like, I'm going to call it honeycombed. It's obviously not honeycomb, but this kind of like recessed honeycombed kind of roofing. Just a really great set piece. A big obelisk with actually something on top there, which is cool because you would never notice. There's a lot of things in this game that you have to come back and collect, given your replayability, come back to the beginning kind of stuff. So something up there that I can only get later on when I've got special powers. But I know, big obelisk. This is just super good design. So you've got different levels of roofs. You've got obviously these roofs here with these lights that we saw at the very beginning of the game, but they're just turned off this time. And then we go up a little bit into that honeycombed recess in there, but then we've got some nice piping and some aircon to kind of make it look realistic. Because obviously, where's the aircon? Where's the piping? Where's the plumbing? It's got to have it. But even if we've got this really nice honeycombing, we've still got the aircon. And then we go up into this area, which is this kind of like recessed lighting concrete section here with a big obelisk in the middle. At the bottom of that obelisk, we've got some chairs. We've seen mug, ashtray, chairs. We've seen all these before. We've just kind of given a bit more information because now some of them are on the side. Gives the impression that there's a bit of chaos happening. Spilled over magazine rack, document folders. Really great little like typing pool kind of setup. So everything is pretty not uniform, pretty repeated here. I can see here if I look down, I'm seeing that we've got a yellow, then an orange, then a yellow, then an orange, then an orange, then an orange, then a yellow. Oh, but I've knocked it over. It's still physics object, so I can still mess with it. So there is an amount of symmetry or amount of repetitiveness in this, but they've broke it up by either changing the color or slightly shifting these lamps might be ever so slightly rotated. Again, just to ever so slightly upset the repetition. Obviously, it's all physics, so I can go around and upset the repetition myself. But all this is just all symmetry. Same objects. What we got going on? We've got a desk, a typewriter, a blotting stamp, pen on a string, folders, light, in and out tray, ashtray. Every one will pretty much have the exact same setup I'm looking at. It's all physics on it. It's all. In fact, that's a really good example of actually what's happening is when they build the environment, they have these, which are one object with drawers on the inside, and then they place this desk on top of it to make the desk. It's so stupidly simple, but you would never think about it. But so let's have a look at this. This is all pretty symmetrical going down this line, except the typewriters are all slightly offset from each other. All the lights are slightly offset from each other. All the folders are slightly offset from each other. So it is actually the same thing. They would have duplicated and then duplicated and duplicated, and then just rotate stuff around. But it's all the same stuff. We've seen we've actually at this point seen everything. Nothing is new from us now. It's all the same shit. The newest element. Oh, I've got stuff around me. The newest element in this scene are the people. They're the newest element. So if we go boop, and then we see that we've got this little shelter. So even inside these little shelters, there's a lot of very good repetition. We've got office out here. Oh, look at that. This is new. Actually, what is this? It's like what is this? Self-service vending machine for all your needs. The vending machine company. So this geezer. Oh. Just clever stuff. Clever stuff. Very, very clever. Inside the shelters, these are like emergency shelters to get away from the funk, to get away from your naturalness. And even inside here, we've got a lot of things we can see the repetition inside the environment. You know, we look around, we see the repetition in the walls, and then we see like repetition in these. I don't know what these are. These kind of elements here. This, what's it saying then? Fenderson housing. This kind of geezer, which I like this because this isn't a cause and effect thing. There's 6 beds in here because I think it says this is room for 6 people. Yeah, maximum occupancy is 6 people. And what we have here are 6 beds, and this is really cool because these fold down to make these beds, and you can see there's pillows there. It's just very clever. It's the cause and effect I love about that. And then tables and chairs, cylinder, all you know. Oh, it's amazing. So we carry on. Ooh, more red stuff. Again, what does red mean? Red means danger. So what I'm going to do is clear out the enemies from here, and then we're going to have it just finish off by looking at this environment. So let me... Okay, so I've cleansed the control point. So now what used to be all these like geometric shapes now kind of like converts into this kind of zone. Very, very cool, as you saw just at the beginning of them. So this last place I'm going to show you in this video, I'd love to show you the entire game, but it's a big game. There's a lot of stuff to go through. But this is just the exact same thing that's happened as before. A lot of very cool design, but it's all very simple, all very, very geometric because it suits this 1960s, 1970s kind of vibe. You know, the Big Brother, the governmental building, brutalism, lots of right angles. But there's a lot of shape languages happening because look at this. We've got a triangle. What's that doing? It's pointing towards this area down to the bottom. But in these areas, we can wander around. This is kind of like the hub world. When we wander around, we can see lots of really fun stuff. But we've seen all this before. None of this is new. This is all just the same shit. We've got the picture frames. We've got the couches that we've seen before. We've got the water cooler, lamps, coffee tray, couches. This little yellow seat guy. At this point, we've pretty much seen all the office furniture in the game, and there's an incredible amount of office spaces within the game. But we've pretty much seen everything. I think rarely is there any new of this kind of object in the game. I mean, that's new. This interactable like radio, that's kind of new. Oh, there's computer. We've not actually seen a computer yet, so you get this really old-fashioned looking computer geezer there. I mean, that's disgusting. I love it. You know. But a lot of this stuff we've seen already. It's only when we come up to new environments with new kind of setups we see other objects. So you can see that a lot of this is very, very basic, very, very simple. Once we understand how to make it, it's very simple. It's just used over and over again in clever ways. Even if it's just changing the color, slightly changing the shape, arranging so we don't necessarily see everything repeating itself very obviously. You know, the way these are arranged on the shelves here, with all the files and the filofaxes and the folders, it's not super obvious. It's obvious when you know what you're looking at. I can already see repeating patterns, and hopefully you can now. But to a civilian, they don't care. You know, they're coming through. They've just killed all the hiss, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna explore. We're gonna overlook over here." You know, I'm literally playing like a player would do now. So it's like, "Oh, I've just done that." I'm looking up there. It's like, "Oh, this is kind of pretty. Look at that. Oh, he's spooky, hanging up there." Oh, I'm gonna go over here. Like, okay. Oh, what's that over there? Oh, I can't get in there yet. Okay, I'll walk over here. So this is the kind of play that a player will be doing. Ooh, yeah, that kind of stuff. So I'll leave it there. What's this? Hour and 25 minutes. Great game. This is the game level environment art, game design, analytical video of stuff. I've gone over a lot of different things. I've not gone over character. I've not really gone over foliage. But what we've talked about is a lot of where we're repeating elements. We're looking at modular environment stuff a little bit. You know, we've not looked at some of the more crazier elements of modular modeling. We will come back into this probably and look at modular elements a little bit more closely. But hopefully this has opened your eyes once again to how game levels, game environments are made in a 3D sense. Cool. See you in the next one.